be trying to speak at this level. Can everyone hear me? Okay, if I turn it up, we'll get wicked feedback. I know you don't want that.
Yep.
So, I'm David Vincent. My wife, Ann, and I have lived at Duane Lake for 36 years. My, how time flies. And so we have lots of stories, and I'll probably stay away from those tonight. However, the other day I was down at the shore, and I looked across the lake, and here was this guy over there waving. I think he was waving to me, and so I waved back. And pretty soon he yells, "Hey, how do I get to the other side?" And I said, "Buddy, you're on the other side." All right, always begin with a joke. I know it's an old one. Sorry. I'll try to stick with history from this point on. So, jump right into this, or not. So there we go. Tonight's presentation, we're going to cover these topics. We'll kind of slide from one into the other, but I'm going to start by a little review of Duanesburg's lakes and streams and talk about what the lake is today and the history of Duane Lake. And most people don't know that history goes back perhaps 200 years or more. Preparing for the future and life around the lake through some pretty cool pictures. So, jumping right in, this is the USGS topo map, and the only natural lake in Duanesburg is Featherston Lake. So here's Duane Lake, its characteristic triangular shape. And then this is Mariahville Lake. So both Duane Lake and Mariahville Lake are impounded lakes. And then here we have something that's called the Duanesburg Reservoir. And down here, the Delanson Reservoir. I'll get back to those. Schoharie Creek, of course. And the two main streams coming through, well, three main streams. The Chuctanunda up here in Mariahville, the Normanskill, and the Bozenkill, which is just off the map here. I'll be showing you better pictures of those. So, does anyone know why Delanson has a water supply? Someone does know, yes. It has a water supply for the same reason it has the name Delanson. The Delaware and Hudson built the reservoirs because steam engines require water. So that's why we have, I don't know why it's called the Duanesburg Reservoir, but it's connected to the Delanson water supply there.
They used to call it the upper reservoir.
The upper reservoir, yeah. That's how I knew of it in my youth, but maps are calling it Duanesburg Reservoir.
Okay.
All right, so here's, the Normanskill is pretty much the big stream if you discount the Schoharie Creek. And this is the drainage area of the Normanskill, and it runs, here's Duane Lake, this is the Bozenkill. They connect up here with something else that I can't read, and they provide water for the Waterville Reservoir, and then it connects with a couple streams, and then eventually empties into the Hudson. So this map isn't particularly good. It indicates a body of water here that's really just a swamp. If you remember, if you drive Route 20, it goes right past this. And then I don't even know what that's supposed to be as the beginning of the Bozenkill. But that, you know, Wikipedia. So this is a satellite view of Duane Lake. Here's that swamp that I mentioned. And Schoharie Turnpike, Route 20, obviously I-88, North Mansion Road, and both sides of Duane Lake Road and West Duane Lake Road. And so, to get your bearings, and you'll see this a couple more times, this is the inlet side of the lake, and this is the original outlet. That's where the dam is. And so this is an engineered path for water, and there's a canal that connects up to the stream. You'll see a better view of that here. So here's where the actual Bozenkill runs, and it runs through the Christmas Sanctuary. Water used to come through here. somewhere about here, I guess, and was dammed up a long time ago. That's part of the history I'll be getting to. And so this was the original outlet, and then this is the man-made one that the developers called a spillway. We all tend to refer to it as the canal. And you see here the Christmas Sanctuary, but here's a better picture of it, or map of it. And I'll be referring to the Bosanquille Falls. Now, that's not either of these falls, but these are the ones you can actually visit. These are accessible by trail from parking lot here at the Christmas Sanctuary. So they're great waterfalls, especially when the streams are really flowing. And if you haven't been there, you should visit the sanctuary. It's a great place. So, Duane Lake today. It's approximately 120 acres in size. It is about 880 feet elevation above sea level. There are approximately 98 homes around the lake. The watershed's approximately, everything's approximately here, 323 acres in size. It may be larger than that. There's some question about some backflow I'll get to when I show a map of the watershed. We believe the lake to be 25 feet deep at its deepest point or points, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It's an impounded lake with a dam that was built currently, the lake. The dam was built in 1926 to 27. It's a private lake with no public access. A lot of people will park around the lake, a lot of people from around town and beyond, because it's a nice 2.5 mile walk around the lake. So adding the mileage of a piece of North Mansion Road and West Duane Lake Road and Duane Lake Road, it's about a 2.5 mile walk or bicycle ride. And the sources of lake water are springs and an inlet stream. The lake does provide domestic water for many lakeside homes. There was a period of time, about half of them. I don't know what that number is today. And the lake's currently classified as eutrophic, which means it has an excessive concentration of nutrients, primarily phosphorus and nitrogen. So this is a pretty neat contour map of the lake bottom. We don't really know who drew this, but you can see the inlet here. And this is the dam. We know the current dam is in the same location as the original, perhaps 18th or 19th century dam. And so is it 25 feet deep here in the middle and in front of the dam? Well, I don't know. And this part was designed as the main outflow because in order to protect the dam. I'll be referring back to that. So here's the lake watershed map. It's not a very big watershed. And most of it, apart from what's directly around the lake, and because of the geography here, very steep. Even our house is here, and our septic system is on the other side of the lake watershed. So it's in the larger Normanska watershed. So it's not much, but we're concerned, of course, about what goes on in the watershed because ultimately it affects the water of Duane Lake. So the history. Here's where we begin the real story here. So the first human settlers of the property where Duane Lake is were Indians, and I use Indians rather than Native Americans because when Congress approved money to build a museum for the American Indians, that's the name they chose. And they surveyed native tribes, and more than 50% did not want to be called Native Americans. They prefer American Indians. Only 30% wanted to be called Native Americans. So I'm sticking with the Indians. These were likely Mohican, Mohawk Indians that are known to have lived and fished along the Normanskill Creek and its tributaries. Over the years, many Indian artifacts, such as a mortar and pestle, hammerstones, spearheads, and arrowheads, have been found along the Bosanquille above the falls. I'll get back to that falls in a moment. There were two known Indian settlements in the little valley that's occupied by Duane Lake today. One right where the lake is, and one a little bit farther downstream that was known as the Indian Clearing. So, a little bit of Duanesburg history, primarily through purchase. James Duane eventually owned over 40,000 of the town's more than 46,000 acres. Duane retained water and mineral rights on any land he sold or leased. So, of course, I don't know that there's been any minerals of any value found in Duanesburg, but why would Duane have wanted to control water rights? Well, we'll get to that because it has to do with
transportation.
Has to do with enticing people to move into this wilderness. And in order to do that, he had to provide, they couldn't just call up Bellevue Builders and have them drop 2x6s in the driveway. So it was very important for his development plans to have sawmills and then eventually grist mills because of production of flour and also feed for farm animals. All right. So Duane gifted 1,000 acres to each of his 5 adult children, 4 of whom built houses and lived in Duanesburg. In 1787, Duane's eldest daughter married Major William North. He later became General North. And in 1788, they moved from New York City to Duanesburg, taking possession of Mary's 1,000 acres and building the first Duane family home in town. And part of that land became Duane Lake in the 20th century. So in 1783, James Duane had a sawmill constructed. In his biography, it says the Boosekill. Well, I know it's the Bosenkill. I say presumably, but I'm quite convinced it was. And it was located just above the falls. On property that became North's, this mill was probably owned by North in conjunction with his father-in-law. To provide water for the mill, dams were constructed upstream along the creek. One of the impoundments was along the stream just south of North's house and was referred to as North's Pond. This was the precursor to Duane Lake, and it probably dates from around 1790. If the mill was constructed in 1783, anytime thereafter, they would have been looking for ways to hold back water to power the mill. So one of the impoundments was along the stream. I already said that. This was the precursor to Duane Lake. It probably dates from 1790. It was smaller than the current lake, but honestly not by much. And it had a log and earthen dam constructed in the stream bed. It is recorded that North had his pond stocked with bullhead, which became prodigious. Now there's an anecdote that I read somewhere that in the winter he would cut a hole in the ice and he could scoop those bullhead up. I don't know. I fished for bullhead when I was a kid, but they weren't my favorite fish. And by the way, they have a nasty spine. All right. So, at the County Historical Society, which is in the Stockade, if you don't know where it is, there are 2 James Frost documents directly related to the North property. Now, I had to look up protraction. This is a protraction of the North Estate, 1846, and field notes in a particular book, field book. And then a rough map of General North property, also 1846, and I'll tell you why that date's important. So, this is, I can do a better job than this, so you'll see better. Forgive me if I'm blocking you people over there. The North property rough map. So generally, here is the North house and barns, and this is, they called it North's Pond. And then down here, this is all North's property, the southern part. You see where the Bosenkill comes through and the falls. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. James Frost was a surveyor who lived in Mariahville and worked in Albany, Schenectady, Montgomery, and Scary counties. He was the engineer of the Albany and Susquehanna Railroad. He made many valuable and extensive surveys in Albany, Schenectady, Scary, Franklin, and Montgomery counties, and laid out the city of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Years ago, and I've seen one reference that says it was 1946, a Frost descendant gifted James Frost extensive files to the Schenectady County Historical Society. These are indexed and searchable online, not the files themselves, just the identity of each file. And there are 192 Duanesburg items in the files, and the files are extensive. His field books, by the way, are owned by the New York State DEC Bureau of Real Property. I don't know where those would be, probably in Albany. So, this is a picture of what it looks like. This is the top part of the survey, 1846. This is an actual photo, but happily, and it's light pencil sketches on age-darkened paper. It is really difficult to see. However, with the magic of digital photography, look at that. This is the same image edited digitally, and 180 years of aging goes away with a click. Well, perhaps more than one click. But, so you can get a better picture here. This is North Mansion Road, and this is the house and wing, and a different, that other protracted protraction shows the house in a larger scale with actually another little wing and I believe also a barn at a 90-degree angle. So it was a complex there, and these were North's barns. This was what later became the tenant house and some other structures. And North owned all of this. It indicates orchard, lots of orchards. And so this is the lower part, the southern part of North's property. So you can see, I'll be showing you this in better detail, but this is the Bozenkill Creek. It comes in here. It was impounded. This is a mill dam, a mill pond. And then these are the falls. And this is the pond, and this is Duane Lake today. So it really isn't that much bigger. The areas where the lake is enlarged were done by bulldozer, and that's part of the later part of the story of the history. So the mill pond and mill. Excuse me. That is where those falls are, and I'll tell you, they are private. They're privately owned. They're posted. They're fenced, and don't even think about going. So here's the mill pond and the mills. Most of the dam is still there, and the stream. So in geologic time, the stream apparently went here in the past, and perhaps after the Ice Age. I wouldn't know what caused it to change course, and it's been back here a long time. So anyway, enough about that. So around 1818, North gave over operation of the estate to his son, William A.S. North. North's wife and daughter had died within a few years of each other, and he was ready to retire. So General North retired to property he owned on the Connecticut shore. He died in New York City in 1836. Now his son, William A.S. North, a Union College graduate, operated the estate until his own death in 1845. So his heirs, his wife Margaret and their daughter Hannah Elizabeth, operated the North Farm and estate thereafter, gradually subdividing and selling off pieces. Hence the 1846 survey. Happily, we have that. So the major sale of the house, barns, and some 400 acres was to Irish immigrants, Joseph and Mary McQuaid, in 1863. The mill site was apparently sold to Nicolaus Van Patten. You may know the Van Patten name, millwrights in Duanesburg for generations. At about the same time, Warren Little, in his 1988 book, The Way We Were, nothing to do with the movie, by the way, cites Nicolaus Van Patten as the operator of both a sawmill and a grist mill at the Bozenkill mill site. In 1883, Nicolaus's grandson, William Van Patten, converted the sawmill to steam power. So no longer used as a water supply for mill power, the McQuaids abandoned the dam and the North's pond gradually disappeared. The tillable land was returned to agricultural use by the McQuaids. It was at this time that Indian artifacts were discovered long hidden by North's Pond. In the 1920s, the McQuades were presented with a unique opportunity to sell their property. And that is the birth of Duane Lake. On March 30, 1926, three Schenectady men, Mason W. Hall, Edmund P. Waller, and Arthur S. Golden, established the Bosanquille Lake Corporation. They purchased about 400 acres from the McQuades, including the spring, swamp, stream bed, and 18th century dam and pond site. Their purpose was to develop a summer resort with an easy travel distance from Albany and Schenectady. They engaged a civil engineer from Union College, Professor Warren C. Taylor, to design a modern dam and engineer an outlet. Work began in 1926. Bulldozers shaped the shoreline and created a new outlet stream bed called the Spillway. A new dam of about 20 feet in height was constructed on the site of North's previous log dam, spanning the narrow dell where the original stream flowed. Logs from North's 18th century dam were encountered and removed to make way for the new structure. The new dam included a concrete core with a valve mechanism designed to allow a controlled release of water if conditions ever presented a threat to the dam's integrity. The McQuades continued to reside in the North Mansion and to farm in a limited way until the death of Joseph McQuade in 1939, and the Bosanquille Lake Corporation acquired the house and remaining land in 1940. Who were these developers? Mason Hall was a Schenectady businessman, a partner in Patton and Hall, a shoe store at 425 State Street, Schenectady. Edmund Waller, an official of the GE Company, and graduate of the Virginia Polytechnic Institute, class of 1900. He was manager of the railway department for GE. And Arthur Golden was an attorney, a graduate of Union College, class of 1902. He once served as Schenectady County Attorney. He was in private practice at 122 Wall Street, Schenectady. So this is a print ad that they took out. They were advertising widely. Throughout the construction years, there was considerable public interest in the project. Many newspapers printed articles covering the work. By 1929, the lake was full of water and stocked with fish. The resort project was ready for market. A solicitation letter and brochure offered, "Have you ever dreamed of a spot for a summer home which is near at hand and yet has all the advantages of a mountain retreat? Ah, such a spot is awaiting you. It is Duane Lake, the queen of small lakes." Duane Lake has been designed to embody the dreams of many city dwellers who, tired of the turmoil of city life, wish to dwell among the peaceful, who wrote this, peaceful and pleasant surroundings of the rolling hills and woods. The flyer touts such available pastimes as bathing, hiking, horseback riding, and fishing, along with the winter pursuits of skiing, skating, and tobogganing. This was a period of time in American history when the Industrial Revolution had kind of changed the common behavior of every man, of the average man. Whereas in an agricultural society, as some of you farmers know, it's a 7-day-a-week proposition. But suddenly there were weekends. People actually began traveling and enjoying mountains and things. And so the idea was, well, expressed here, a perfect place for you to work in Schenectady or Albany and live out here in this idyllic spot. So this is sadly, we don't have an original of this flyer. And as you can see, we're sort of missing the middle of it here. But some of what I recited to you came from this cover letter. And this was a depiction of what they hoped to be Duane Lake. Those of us who live there know that's really not the shape of it, but it's close. At least it still has the triangular effect. So, the promotional flyer proposed the use of all 400 acres, and the future could include, listen to this, a clubhouse overlooking the lake on one side and the beautiful Schoharie Valley on the other, a golf course and tennis courts. Now, is there anyone here who can see Schoharie Valley from Duane Lake? I can get to the very top of my house, and I cannot see Schoharie Valley. Well, anyway, it's promotion. So, it was a grand plan, but what happened? Well, just think One must wonder, was the now cliched aphorism, timing is everything, known in 1929? With their investment fully expended and their construction completed, little could these developers have known how profoundly challenged everyday life would become for most Americans in the months and years to follow. On Black Thursday, October 24, 1929, the financial world was deeply challenged, Wall Street collapsed, and the country gradually slipped into the Great Depression that would profoundly change the American way of life. Perhaps compared to the monumental collapse of so many American dreams in that era, the paralysis of the Duane Lake Resort project warrants little more than a marginal note. But for the three developers, the pain and disappointment had become deep and troubling. And there's little question that the project was immediately in trouble. By 1931, only 4 lots had been sold. Challenging financial circumstances drove the developers to seek a buyer for the whole property. Now this could have been the present, their future. A series of letters published in 1931 in the Altamont Enterprise are quite revealing. Throughout 1930, the village of Altamont had experienced a severe shortage in its municipal water supply. A December 24, 1930 letter sent to the village mayor, E.W. Wendell, by Arthur Golden from his law office at 122 Wall Street, offered to sell Duane Lake to the village as a permanent and sufficient water supply. The mayor responded on January 2nd by asking Mr. Golden to provide the cost of acquisition. In response, Golden presented some interesting and revealing information. As for cost, quote, "We're not doing any intensive development of this property as a summer resort. There being 4 cottages now erected, which of course would need to be repurchased in case of a sale, unless you permitted them to use the water. We've been selling lots for $1,500 each. That's 66 lots at about $27,000 in today's value. And on this basis would realize something over $100,000. This process is necessarily slow and would probably extend over a period of 4 or 5 years. Therefore, we're willing to sell it at the present time at a slight advance over our actual cost and would sell the whole property for $85,000. Now that's about $1.6 million today. The mayor declined the offer, citing the cost of bringing the water from any point, such as Duane Lake, makes a proposition of this kind prohibitive. So, gradually over the next 2 decades, the 30s and 40s, lots were eventually sold, many at a reduced size, and camps and homes were constructed. Eventually, some 75 lots were created and sold around the lakeshore. Now remember, there was no zoning, so they could cut those lots up as small as they could get away with. By the 1950s, about 50% of lots held houses or camps, and a sense of a neighborhood community had begun to emerge. The Altamont Enterprise had a regular Duanesburg section with columns full of social notes and other news from Duane Lake and around the town. Among the noted activities was the reemergence of the white-tailed deer population in the 1930s. I don't know what happened to it prior to the 1930s. Hunted out? I don't know. Seen first around the Duane Lake shoreline. Ice was harvested from the lake every winter, and late freezes were newsworthy. People in those days were still using ice boxes, so harvesting ice was a big deal. In 1932, the county constructed 2 new roads in the lake area, Schoharie Turnpike and North Mansion Road. Now, this was a public works project during the Depression, so Skyline Drive, I think, was another one that was built perhaps about that time. Anyway, during the same period, the reforestation of the Duanesburg hillsides was noteworthy, with 12,000 fir, Norway spruce, Scotch pine, and red pine trees planted around the lake in 1933, and 20,000 planted in 1934. So, if you think about those dates, those trees that were planted back then are pretty old now, and they were planted really closely together, and they're tall and skinny and weak, and they're always coming down, and often taking our power lines with them. And so, well, you never know, right? So, when I was a boy, which admittedly was in the middle of the last century, this was still going on. Howard McNett, H.H. McNett. There were older boys when I was in school who worked for him in summers still planting trees back then in the 1950s, maybe early 60s. So, reforestation, yeah. Anyway, by the mid-1950s, the affairs of the developers had waned to residual ownership of unsold real estate. In 1953, one of the Lake residents, Mr. Edward O'Connor Sr., an attorney, along with Robert Bender and Henry Bilecki, purchased the residual assets of the Bosanquille Lake Corporation, including the lake and about 200 surrounding acres. There were, at the time, some 35 to 40 camps and cottages around the lake. So, by the 50s, okay, that's about all there was. Now, an event of note. In October of 1955, a fall storm dropped an historic amount of water in the region. This affected the whole Capital District region. There was considerable risk of the waters of Duane Lake overtopping the dam, leading to its potential destruction. A large group of local volunteers, including the National Guard, worked through the night to sandbag the top of the dam. Downstream residents along the Bosanquille were evacuated. The Bosanquille runs to Altamont, by the way. In the end, the dam held. Subsequently, the culvert carrying the lake's outflow under West Duane Lake Road was enlarged, thus reducing the risk of a future similar event. Fortunately, yeah.
I was one of those volunteers.
Is that right? Good for you. Thank you. All of you from Duane Lake, here's Amanda, thanks. How old were you?
I was 18 or
18.
I lived on Schoharie Turnpike, right near where you go down into the lake.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
I bet. I was a little tad back then. So, in 1955, the Duanesburg Town Board was approached and asked to take over and maintain the 2+ miles of Duane Lake Road. As reported in the Altamont Enterprise, quote, the Town Board agreed to take over the road providing a clear deed to 50 feet of land, including the present roadbed, and a survey map of same, are presented to the board and meets with their approval. With that event, apart from an occasional sale of real estate, the active affairs of the corporation essentially terminated. So, obviously the town took it over because it's a town road. So at some point in the mid-'80s, the residual assets and liabilities of the corporation were liquidated or settled, and I don't really know the details. And on September 6, 1985, the corporation was dissolved. Following that action, 2 local attorneys acquired tracts of undeveloped corporation land, Mr. Featherston and Mr. Callahan. Both owners have sold residential parcels that have included deed restrictions similar to the restrictions imposed by the original Bosanquille Lake Corporation on the sale of lots. Currently, the town controls the subdivision of larger parcels. So, today and into the future, well, deed restrictions. Yes, all parcels that were created and sold by the original 1926 corporation carried restrictions written into the deeds, which run with the property, not the owner. They are all still in effect today. For example, there are regulations controlling boats, no motors, fishing, maximum daily catch, and any guest fishing must be accompanied by owners, and hunting is prohibited. There are deed restrictions covering concerns such as building construction, outdoor toilets, garbage cans. Certain uses are prohibited, such as hotels, boarding houses, ice cream parlors, dancing halls, amusement parks, and other commercial enterprises, including boat livery. These considerations now primarily fall under the town zoning ordinance, but the deed restrictions still hold. So regarding motors, in 2001, the town amended a local law from 1996 that prohibits the operation of a mechanically propelled vehicle on the waters of the lake. So if it were only deed restrictions, then that's a civil action, but with this town law, then it's a violation of town law. I don't know much more than that. So the Bosanquille Lake Corporation originally established a formal Duane Lake Association that was part of the development plan for the lake community. A willing buyer had to be elected into the association in order to purchase property. This arrangement held for a few years, but eventually the formal association with the developers transitioned to what it is today. It's still called the Duane Lake Association, the DLA. It is a voluntary, self-governing organization with a board whose officers and members are elected by dues-paying members of the association. Annual dues primarily cover the many expenses of managing the lake itself and encouraging and supporting an array of community-focused events. Some events are purely social, some are focused on water quality and the quality of life around the lake. In 2018, supported by its membership, the DLA was incorporated as a 501c4 tax-exempt corporation. Among other benefits of incorporating, the organization was able to take ownership of the lake bottom in 2021. So, managing the resources. the water. So there's an organization called CSLAP, the New York State Citizens Statewide Lake Assessment Program. The next screen will tell you more about it. These are the lakes in New York State that participate. And you go to the next screen. So it's a volunteer lake monitoring program run by DEC and the New York State Federation of Lake Associations. It was established by conservation law. Initiated in 1985, CSLAP was modeled after successful volunteer programs in Vermont, Maine, Illinois, and Minnesota. Each participating lake association is a member of the state association, a not-for-profit coalition of lake associations and others interested in lake management. NISFOLA was founded in 1983 and presently serves nearly 300 associations, as well as individual and corporate members, and over 160 currently participate in CSLAP. That was the map that we saw of New York State. Published resources. This excellent book, Diet for a Small Lake. I have a copy of the first edition. This picture is of the second edition. It's a substantial and very helpful book. This is close to my heart. If you drive down Route 20 all summer long, you can't see the waters of the Watervliet Reservoir because of this little thing here. Yeah. Come on, help me out. What's the name of it? Water chestnut. Thank you. All I could think of was milfoil, which is this one. And we have curly leaf pondweed, which is nothing like either of these. And I've actually pulled some of these from the lake. The seeds can be brought in by waterfowl. So it's a constant effort to keep our lake. So we also have a handbook. The current homeowner's guide can be downloaded from Duane Lake Association.blogspot.com. And another significant document there is the published lake management plan. And other valuable resources from the DLA website are copies of newsletters from 2009 forward and minutes of our board. So, volunteers hard at work. Every Earth Day, the weekend nearest Earth Day, April 22nd is Earth Day, our volunteers, and I have one of those, my wife and I each have one of those green t-shirts. We clean, we walk the entire distance, both sides of Duane Lake Road, West Duane Lake Road, North Mansion Road, and much of Schoharie Turnpike, not all the way to Quaker Street. Oops. And then that outlet canal that I mentioned, this spillway, we can't let that get plugged. So that's another task that volunteers will undertake to keep the brush out of it. And there's just so much more that goes on. I haven't even mentioned the social functions. So fishing, in case you're wondering, there is no public access to Duane Lake. And I call them alien boats or watercraft, are not to be used. This is to reduce the threat of exposure to unwelcome invasive species of any kind, flora or fauna. And as I previously mentioned, per deed restrictions, all fishing guests are to be accompanied by the homeowner. And so, that's the story of Duane Lake. Once an Indian encampment, then an 18th century mill pond, for a while agricultural fields, and then a 20th century resort development. And for us, it's a beloved, it's a great neighborhood today. So my special thanks to many dedicated volunteers who serve tirelessly to help maintain the quality of life, including the quality of water in the Duane Lake community. And my heartfelt thanks to Alan Knight and Carl Wiedemann for sharing pictures, background research, and documents for this presentation. And now, a few pictures. And you can see I took that one. I tried to identify, if I know, the source of the photo. And these are our nesting eagles. I don't know if all of you knew that we have this amazing thing. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Yeah, a lot of fun to watch them. They're amazing creatures. Okay, a blue heron. Right. Now, these are my dear wife's these are bird feeders. And it was a couple of weeks ago, we had 24 of those little turkeys in the yard. And this, of course, you probably know, is a pileated woodpecker going after her suet. And they haven't been the only visitors to the bird feeder. So I've had to rebuild that bird feeder twice this year. Once we actually saw the bear. Well, we saw the bear. Made a racket out there in the middle of the night. We yelled from our bedroom window, "Get out of here!" So we sent it up. Some of you up here. You got it. Okay, thanks. So, summer fun on the lake, winter fun. This is a picture I took Thanksgiving morning 3 years ago. That's sunrise on Duane Lake. So, if you live on the North Shore, as we do, you get to see the sunrise, but you got to go all the way around the lake to the other side to see the sunsets. And that is an amazing picture. Michael and McClanahan, the young lady who took that, and it's like, wow, stunning. So anyway, thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'm happy to try to answer questions if you have any. And yeah, Howard.
Why would anybody want to own the bottom of the lake? So somebody else could.
Yeah, that's about it. To prevent it from going somewhere else. Yeah. Anyway.
I thought you had more pictures of the houses that are around there. No?
No, I'd have to go and get everyone's permission to have a picture of their house. So, Bart.
When I was a kid peddling milk, there was a hall place, and it probably was from the hall that was listed here, and that is past Bob Bender's and down and around from your side, and it was I think maybe an O'Connor was in there once. So it's a long straight driveway. Is that the hall place?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Which place.
Okay. Anyway.
I know the three O'Connor places.
Yeah. Well, the first one I think had been a permanent dwelling from Hall, and Patton and Hall. If you go down Route 7 eastbound, just before the railroad tunnel on the left, DeCoco's area, there's I think it's a board and batten siding unpainted barn on the right. On the west wall of which the whole wall was advertising Patton and Hall shoe store. Look, I know that because as a kid we drove the milk truck to Bellevue Dairy every morning around 2 o'clock to get our load to bring out, and there was this huge Patton and Hall shoe store advertising, which I still remember.
I came across the story of the store burning on State Street.
Oh, really?
Patton and Hall, yeah, shoe store burning.
Wow.
No motorboats, but I remember Gig Wilbur used to fly a plane in and out.
Sure enough. Summer and winter, yeah. Skis or pontoon. Yeah. You know, I have a lot of Gig Wilbur stories, but that's another thing. But I went out with him many times, especially during deer season. I can't imagine why he found someone. Yeah.
There was a lot of milk snakes in that area too, because I used to ride over them on a bicycle.
Well,
But I mean, you go out, I was riding my bike, couldn't go around, it was a road with me.
Yeah, it wasn't completed, yeah.
And they would be, great big ones.
Well, we have. I don't even tell my wife where I see them. eastern water snakes. They're pretty fierce looking. All right, Ian? Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. And those of you who, if it's your first visit, we do this often. We do it. We have 9 events a year. 7 of them are programs here, and then there's a picnic and a special Christmas program. So, and membership in the Historical Society is $10 a year. It's amazing, and your money is very well spent. So I'm encouraging you to think about joining the Historical Society. And next month's speaker, Mr. McDougall. Mr. McDougall.
Well, next month's program makes me nervous because number one, it's about ghosts, so I can't show you any pictures. and number two, not being a, quote, a sensitive, unquote, and like you, if there are ghosts around, like at North Mansion, you couldn't prove it by us.
Absolutely.
We shared that mutual ignorance, but
Insensitivity.
well, yeah, it's a sensitivity. Yeah, I mean ignorance of the paranormal.
Okay.
But so I've got to count on people who have information that they are willing to share, but they love anonymity.
All right. All right.
And so I'm dependent on source, just like the lake, you know. So I don't know what's going to happen, but you can come and find out. It's supposed to be perhaps paranormal encounters, experiences at Christ Church. I have no idea how that's going to happen, but my daughter and I will show up.
And you're all invited.